Ethan had always thought his life was predictable. He hauled cargo between small colonies, avoided trouble, and stayed far away from galactic politics. His ship, the Wayfarer, was old but reliable, until it wasn't. The last job had taken him through a rough asteroid field, and now his main engine was coughing like it had caught some kind of space flu. He limped into the docking bays of the Varentus capital world, a glittering hub of trade and power. The planet's skyline was layered with floating platforms and tall, spire-like towers that glowed softly in the thin atmosphere. To Ethan, it was just another stop, another port where he could hopefully find parts, fix the Wayfarer, and be gone before anyone noticed him. After paying the docking fee, he stepped into the main marketplace. It was crowded, filled with voices speaking dozens of languages. Vendors sold glowing fruit, crystalline tools, and strange fabrics that shimmered with patterns that moved like water. He was focused on a small shop that claimed to have certified human-compatible ship parts when someone tugged on his jacket. He turned, expecting a merchant or a pickpocket, but instead found himself looking at a young alien girl, slender, with skin that shimmered faintly like pearl and eyes the color of deep blue seas. She wore fine clothes, nothing like the rough outfits of street kids. "Are you Ethan?" she asked. He hesitated. "Depends who's asking." The girl's expression was serious. "My name is Liara. My mother needs a partner, and I wish for a father. Please marry her." Ethan stared at her. "What?" She didn't flinch. "My mother is the ruler of this world, of this empire. She must take a partner soon. I have chosen you." He thought she might be joking, but her tone was calm, almost royal. "Look, kid, I think you've got the wrong guy. I'm just a cargo pilot. I'm not—" Before he could finish, a group of tall figures in ceremonial armor stepped out from the crowd. Their armor gleamed silver and gold, and each carried a long staff tipped with a small, glowing blade. They bowed slightly to the girl, then turned their unreadable faces toward Ethan. "The Empress requests your presence," one said in a deep, mechanical voice. "I think you mean demands," Ethan muttered. But when he looked around, he realized the crowd had stepped back, watching the scene like it was some grand event. Refusing might get him into trouble he didn't need. "Fine," he said, "but I'm only going to talk." The guards escorted him through wide marble streets toward the tallest spire in the city. The palace was carved from pale stone and edged in gold, its towers reaching into the thin clouds. When they entered, the cool air smelled faintly of flowers, and every step echoed across polished floors. Liara walked beside him as if she'd known him forever. "You're wondering why I chose you," she said. "That's an understatement," Ethan replied. "You don't know me," she continued. "But years ago, you saved me." He frowned. "Saved you?" "You were delivering cargo to the frontier world of Maris 12. Pirates attacked. You fought them off, even though you could have just flown away. You pulled survivors onto your ship. I was one of them." Ethan remembered the incident. It had been years ago. A quick stop had turned into a fight when a pirate ship descended on the colony's spaceport. He had grabbed as many people as he could before escaping. "I didn't know who any of you were," he said. "You didn't ask for payment. You just helped," Liara said. "That's why I trust you. My mother needs someone who isn't trying to gain power for themselves, someone who will protect her and me." Before Ethan could respond, the great doors to the throne chamber opened. The Empress sat upon a wide, high-backed throne made of some silvery metal that seemed to catch and hold light. She was tall, elegant, and carried herself with quiet authority. Her gown shimmered like the surface of a calm sea, and a thin crown rested on her brow. Her eyes, same deep blue as Liara's, studied Ethan with calm curiosity. "This is the human you spoke of?" she asked her daughter. "Yes, mother." The Empress turned her gaze fully to Ethan. "I am Solara, ruler of the Varentis Empire. My people stand at a crossroads. The council demands I take a partner to strengthen our alliances. My daughter has put forward your name. I will not hide that this choice is unusual. Unusual's one word for it, Ethan said before he could stop himself. The corners of her lips lifted in the smallest hint of a smile. I value honesty. I will not force you into anything, but I will offer you the chance to hear why your presence here could change the future of an entire galaxy. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. I'm not exactly future of the galaxy material, Your Majesty. I just fix my ship, fly from one port to another, and avoid trouble. And yet, Solara said, you risked your life for strangers, without reward. You understand responsibility, even when it is not convenient. These are qualities my court often lacks. He glanced between Solara and Liara. He could see the resemblance now. The same steady gaze, the same quiet confidence. Just hear us out, Liara said softly. Ethan looked at the grand room around him, the guards standing silent, the Empress watching him with an unreadable expression, and the girl who believed he could be something more than just a cargo pilot. All right, he said. I'll listen, but I'm not promising anything. Solara inclined her head slightly. That is all I ask. For now. And as he followed them deeper into the palace, Ethan had the uneasy feeling that his life had just taken a turn from predictable to something far, far larger than he ever imagined. The palace corridors seemed endless. Ethan followed Empress Solara and Liara through wide halls lined with tall windows. Sunlight streamed in, making the pale stone glow. Guards stood at every corner, their armor shining, their faces hidden behind smooth masks. They entered a smaller chamber, circular and quiet, with a low table in the center. Servants brought drinks in crystal cups and placed a plate of fruit that shimmered faintly with a silver sheen. Ethan didn't touch it. Sit, Solara said, gesturing to a cushioned chair. She sat opposite him, with Liara beside her. This is where I tell you why you're here, Solara continued, and why my daughter's choice is more than just a child's wish. Ethan leaned back, unsure if he should feel flattered or worried. I'm listening. The Varentis Empire is one of the strongest powers in this region of space, Solara said. But strength attracts enemies. For years, our rivals in the Caloran Coalition have sought to undermine us. They've used spies, trade blockades, and now warships. Open conflict is close. And marriage is supposed to fix that? Ethan asked. In our culture, Solara explained, marriage between rulers and influential houses is more than personal. It's a declaration of unity, an alliance made living and binding. My advisors wish for me to choose a partner from the High Council, but every one of them is tied to some political faction. Choosing any of them will divide the others and give our enemies an opening. So you need someone neutral, Ethan said. Someone with no stake in our noble feuds, Solara confirmed. Someone no one can accuse of favoring one side over another. My daughter believes you fit this role. Ethan glanced at Liara. She was sitting straight, watching him closely. You really think I can help run an empire? He asked her. You helped strangers before, Liara said. You didn't need to. That is what makes you different. Our court is full of people who only help if it benefits them. Ethan let out a small laugh, shaking his head. I'm a cargo pilot. I've never led anything bigger than my ship. I'm not a politician. Sometimes, Solara said, it is those who are not trained in politics who see the truth most clearly. You could be that voice. Before Ethan could reply, the door opened and two aliens in dark blue robes stepped in. They bowed to the Empress, but their eyes, sharp and narrow, focused on him. Your Majesty, one said, we heard the candidate has arrived. We request to speak on behalf of the council. Solara's gaze hardened slightly. Speak, then. The counselor's tone was smooth but edged. With respect, a human traitor is not suitable for such a position. The Galaxy will laugh at us. Worse, our enemies will see it as weakness. Or, Solara replied calmly, they will see it as unpredictable, and therefore dangerous. Unpredictability is not stability, the other counselor said, and stability is what the Empire needs. Ethan could feel the tension in the room, like invisible wires pulling tight. He didn't know much about galactic politics, but he knew when someone wanted him gone. If it makes you feel better, Ethan said, I haven't agreed to anything. It would be better for all if you left, one counselor said, as though giving an order. Liara's eyes flashed. You will not speak to him like that. The room went silent. The counselors looked at her, surprised at her boldness. Solara didn't stop her. This is the man who saved me when I was a child, Liara continued. He risked his life when he could have left us. That is more than any of you have ever done for the people you claim to serve. The counselors exchanged glances, clearly unsettled. Without another word, they bowed stiffly and left. Ethan exhaled, slowly. You've got a lot of people who don't want me here. Yes, Solara said, and that is why, before any decision, you must prove yourself. To the court, to the people, and to yourself. Prove myself how? Solara stood. There will be a gathering tomorrow. Leaders from across the Empire will be present. You will attend as my guest. You will speak with them, listen to them, and show them who you are. So, no pressure. Ethan muttered. You'll do well, Liara said with a smile. You're not like them. That's why they'll notice you. The next day, Ethan stood in a vast hall with high glass walls overlooking the city. Banners of the Varenti's empire hung from the ceiling, and the air buzzed with conversation. Nobles in elaborate robes and officers in shining uniforms moved through the crowd like currents in a river. Solara entered beside him, drawing every eye in the room. Whispers spread quickly when they noticed the human at her side. Stay calm, she said quietly. Let them see you, but do not try to impress. Be yourself. Easier said than done, Ethan thought. He moved through the gathering, exchanging short conversations with those who dared approach him. Some were curious, asking about human customs. Others were cold, offering polite but sharp comments about inexperience and outsiders. One tall alien in a green uniform stepped up to him. Human, he said, if you stand beside the Empress, you must understand our enemies. Tell me, what is your strategy for the Caloran threat? Ethan didn't flinch. From what I've heard, your fleets are spread too thin. If it were my call, I'd pull ships back from the quiet sectors, reinforce the trade lanes, and make it too costly for the Calorans to push further. They're trying to stretch you out. Don't let them, the officer blinked, surprised. That is similar to our military's private assessment. Maybe your enemies aren't the only ones who can read a map, Ethan said. A few nearby guests chuckled. Others looked thoughtful. The whispers around him began to change tone, from doubt to interest. Hours later, after the gathering ended, Solara led Ethan to a balcony overlooking the city. You made an impression, she said. Good or bad? Both. Which means they're thinking. That is a start. Ethan looked at the glowing skyline. I still don't know if I belong here. Neither do I, Solara admitted softly. But sometimes the right choice is the one that feels impossible. Liara stepped onto the balcony, smiling. They're starting to see you like I do. Ethan didn't reply, but inside he felt the first hint that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't entirely out of place here. The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of the city's bells. The soft chimes echoed across the spire-like towers, mixing with the faint hum of air traffic outside. He was staying in a guest chamber of the palace now, large enough to fit his entire ship inside. The walls were decorated with moving patterns of light, shifting slowly like the ocean floor. He sat on the edge of the bed, still not used to the idea that he was here at all. Less than a week ago, He was just a cargo pilot with a broken engine. Now he was living inside the seat of an empire, with an empress and her daughter considering him for something far bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. He didn't know if he wanted that. There was a soft knock at the door. Before he could answer, it slid open and Liara stepped inside. She was smiling, carrying a small tray with cups and a plate of the shimmering silver fruit. "You didn't come to breakfast?" she said, placing the tray on a table. "I'm not much of a breakfast person," Ethan said. "You should be. You'll need your strength. My mother wants to speak with you in the strategy chamber." "Strategy chamber?" Ethan asked. "That sounds serious." "It is," Liara said simply. The strategy chamber was a wide, circular room filled with floating holographic maps of star systems. Glowing lines marked trade routes, patrol paths, and areas under threat. Solara stood at the center, speaking with military officers and advisors. When she saw Ethan, she waved him over. "You should see this," she said. The hologram shifted to show the Empire's border. A section of space glowed red. "The Caloran Coalition has moved warships into this sector," she explained. "They have already taken 3 minor stations. If they take the trade hub at Rethus, they will choke off half our supply routes." Ethan frowned. "So why haven't you stopped them?" "Our fleets are tied to defending multiple fronts," one officer said. "To move them risks leaving other systems vulnerable." Ethan looked closer at the map. "And they know that. They're betting you'll try to protect everything and end up protecting nothing." The officer raised a brow. "And what would you suggest?" "Let them push deeper," Ethan said slowly. "Pull back from the outer ring and draw them toward Rethus. Then close in from both sides. If you fight them head-on now, you'll lose ships. But if you make them think they're winning, they'll overextend." The room went quiet for a moment. One of the advisors spoke. "That is a sound tactic, risky, but effective." Solara studied Ethan's face. "You speak like someone who has fought wars." "I've fought pirates," Ethan said. "Not the same scale, but the logic's similar. Greed makes people reckless. And you think, the Calorans are greedy?" "I think they're counting on you being predictable," Ethan replied. "Prove them wrong." Solara smiled faintly. "You may be more suited for this role than you think." Later that day, as Ethan walked through one of the palace gardens, he noticed a figure standing near the edge of a pool. It was one of the counselors from before, the one who had told him to leave. The man's robe was dark blue, embroidered with silver lines. "Enjoying your stay, human?" the counselor asked without looking at him. "It's different from what I'm used to," Ethan said carefully. "You should not mistake curiosity from the Empress for acceptance," the counselor said. "You are here because of her daughter's whim, nothing more." "Funny," Ethan said. "I've been getting the feeling I'm here because people like you don't know what to do about your problems." The counselor's eyes narrowed. "You will not last here. Our world is not kind to outsiders who think they can lead." "Maybe," Ethan said with a shrug. "But from where I'm standing, it looks like your world could use some new ideas." He walked away, leaving the counselor frowning at his reflection in the pool. That evening, Solara invited Ethan to a private dinner with her and Liara. The room was quiet, lit by soft golden lamps. The table was set with dishes he couldn't even name, though the flavors were surprisingly good. "The council is restless," Solara said after the servants left. "Your presence stirs debate. Some see value in you, others see a threat to their power." "Let me guess," Ethan said. "The loudest ones are the ones who'd lose the most if you married me." Solara gave a small smile. "Correct." "So, what happens next?" Ethan asked. "Tomorrow," Solara said, "you will take part in the trials of worthiness." "Sounds fun," Ethan said, though his tone was anything but excited. "What kind of trials?" 3 challenges, Solara explained. One of mind, one of diplomacy, and one of courage. They are not meant to break you, but to reveal who you are. And if I fail, then you return to your ship, And our paths part, Solara said simply. But if you pass, the court will have no excuse to refuse you. Liara leaned forward. You can do it. I know you can. Ethan wasn't so sure, but he nodded anyway. Guess we'll find out. That night, as he lay in the enormous bed, Ethan stared up at the ceiling. The moving lights above looked like distant stars. He thought about the trials. He thought about Solara, calm but determined, and Liara, with her unwavering belief in him. He thought about the Calorans closing in, about the counselors who wanted him gone, and about how strange it was that he even cared what happened to this empire. When he finally fell asleep, his last thought was that he was no longer just passing through this world. Whether he liked it or not, he was becoming part of it. The morning of the trials began with the sound of the palace bells again, but this time they rang in a slow, steady rhythm. Liara came to Ethan's chamber early, her eyes bright with excitement. The first trial is today, she said. The trial of mind. Trial of mind, Ethan repeated, rubbing his eyes. I'm guessing that's not a puzzle about matching colored stones. She grinned. No, it's a strategic test, one that even experienced leaders sometimes fail. That wasn't exactly comforting. The trial took place in the Grand Council Hall. The high ceiling was supported by white marble pillars, and in the center of the room stood a large circular table covered with a glowing map of the Empire. Small holographic markers represented fleets, planets, and trade routes. Around the room sat members of the court, council, and military. Dozens of eyes watching. Solara sat at the head of the chamber, her calm gaze fixed on Ethan. The trial of mind, she announced, is a test of decision-making. You will be given a crisis, and you must resolve it with the resources available. Success is not simply victory. It is achieving stability with minimal loss. Ethan stepped up to the table. What's the crisis? A military officer tapped the table, and the map shifted. A sector near the Empire's border glowed red. Enemy forces have invaded this sector. They are targeting a vital trade hub. You have 3 fleets available, but 2 are already committed to defending other worlds. If you move them, those worlds will be exposed. So they wanted him to make a choice between losing a trade hub or risking other worlds. He studied the map for a long moment. You're giving me 2 bad choices, Ethan said. There are always more choices, Solara replied quietly. You must find them. He looked closer at the map, his eyes tracing the trade lanes. Then he saw it. A narrow path through an unclaimed asteroid belt. It was dangerous to navigate, but it cut. Travel time to the trade hub by nearly half. Move the nearest fleet through here, Ethan said, pointing to the belt. The enemy won't expect it. At the same time, have civilian freighters from the hub scatter along 3 different routes to confuse them about our real defenses. The officer frowned. The asteroid belt is unstable. Many commanders avoid it. Exactly, Ethan said, which is why they won't be ready for it. It's risky, but better than leaving the hub undefended or sacrificing those other worlds. There was a pause as the council considered his plan. Solara's eyes narrowed slightly, not in disapproval, but in thought. Simulate it, she ordered. The officer keyed in the instructions. On the holographic map, blue fleet markers moved through the asteroid belt, dodging simulated collisions. The enemy forces shifted position, trying to respond, but the blue fleet reached the hub in time. Civilian freighters scattered, drawing off part of the enemy's ships. The simulation ended with the hub still intact and minimal losses. Successful, the officer announced. A ripple of murmurs went through the court. Solara inclined her head. You passed the trial of mind. Liara, sitting nearby, smiled like she'd known the outcome all along. The next day was the trial of diplomacy. Ethan expected this one to be harder. Fighting pirates was one thing. Convincing alien nobles to agree on anything was another. The trial was held in a smaller but still richly decorated chamber. A round table was set, and seated at it were 6 representatives from different sectors of the empire. Each had a different problem, and each problem conflicted with the others. One wanted more resources for shipbuilding, another demanded more trade ships for their colonies. A third complained about border defenses. Each spoke over the other until the room was filled with layered arguments. "Your task," Solara said, "is to find a solution that satisfies all 6, without granting any of them complete victory." Ethan raised his hands. "Okay, first thing, one at a time." Surprisingly, they listened. He took notes as each spoke again, slower this time. Then he noticed something. Several of their problems could solve each other if handled right. "Here's what we'll do," Ethan said after a moment. "Sector 4 gets the extra trade ships they want, but in return, they carry resources to Sector 2 for shipbuilding. Sector 2, in exchange for the resources, sends patrol ships to help Sector 5's border defense. Sector 5, once the border is stable, releases 2 fleets to help Sector 1's security concerns. Everyone gets something and nobody gets everything." The room went quiet as the representatives considered it. One by one, they nodded. Solara smiled faintly. "You passed the trial of diplomacy." On the 3rd day came the trial of courage. Ethan had been wondering what form it would take. Liara wouldn't say, only that it wasn't about fighting, it was about standing when others might run. He found himself in the palace's lower levels, in a large arena-like chamber. Solara and the court watched from a raised platform. Across the arena stood a mechanical beast, tall as a house, built of metal and shaped like some predatory animal. Its eyes glowed red, and its claws scraped the floor. "Your task," Solara called down, "is not to destroy it. It is to reach the control point behind it and shut it down." The beast let out a metallic roar and charged. Ethan ran to the side, dodging as its claws slammed into the floor where he'd been. He grabbed a length of broken spear from the arena floor and used it to trip one of the beast's legs, buying himself seconds. It recovered quickly, swinging its massive head toward him. Ethan kept moving, weaving between its strikes, forcing it to overcommit. Finally, when it lunged too far, he slipped past it, rolling toward the control panel. He slammed his hand on the shutdown lever and the beast froze mid-swipe. The court erupted into applause. Solara stood, her voice carrying across the chamber. "You passed the trial of courage." That evening, Ethan sat in the palace garden with Liara. "You passed all 3, she said proudly. "Barely," Ethan said, rubbing a sore shoulder. "No." "You didn't just pass. You showed them who you are," Liara insisted. "Now they can't deny it. You belong here." Ethan wasn't sure if belong was the right word yet, but he knew this. He had faced their tests, and he was still standing, and in the quiet of the garden under the alien stars, he realized that leaving might no longer be as simple as fixing his ship and flying away. The court gathered in the great throne chamber that morning. The trials were over, and the results had spread across the palace like wildfire. Everyone knew Ethan had passed all 3, and everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Solara sat upon her throne, dressed in deep royal blue, her crown glinting under the soft lights. Liara stood to her right, her expression full of quiet pride. Ethan stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by nobles, advisors, and military officers. Whispers moved through the room like ripples in water. Some still doubted him. Others were curious, and a few, surprisingly, now looked at him with respect. "Ethan," Solara began, her voice carrying across the chamber, "you have faced the trials of mind, diplomacy, and courage. You have shown the qualities that our empire values: wisdom, fairness, and bravery. My daughter chose you because she believed in you. Now, the decision is yours. Will you stand beside me as my partner to help lead this empire?" The room went still. Ethan looked up at her, then at Liara. Her eyes held hope, but she didn't push him. She wanted him to choose for himself. He took a deep breath. When I first got here, I just wanted to fix my ship and leave. I didn't know your world, your people, or your problems. But now I've seen what's at stake. I've seen how much you care for your people. I've seen what Liara believes in. And I think I can help. A wave of murmurs rolled through the court. So, Ethan continued, yes, I'll do it. Liara's face lit up. Solara's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. Then it is decided, Solara said. Let it be known, the human Ethan will stand as my partner and co-leader of the Varentis Empire. The chamber erupted into a mix of applause and muttered arguments. Not everyone was happy, but no one could deny he had earned the right. Celebrations began almost immediately. Banners were hung across the palace balconies and music filled the air. People in the streets below gathered to see the human who would stand beside their empress. But the joy didn't last long. As the sun dipped behind the spires, a sharp, urgent tone rang through the palace. An alarm. The sound echoed off the stone walls, and the cheerful music outside fell silent. A guard rushed into the chamber where Ethan and Solara stood. Your Majesty, the Kaloran fleet has entered the Rethus sector. They've bypassed our outer defenses and are moving directly toward the capital! The air in the room seemed to tighten. Solara stood immediately, her calm replaced with sharp focus. How many ships? At least 30 war cruisers, the guard replied. More arriving by the hour. Ethan didn't wait. They're trying to hit you hard before the marriage alliance can strengthen your position. They want to show the galaxy you can't defend yourself. Solara nodded grimly. We must act now. The War Council gathered in the strategy chamber. Holograms of the Kaloran fleet hung in the air, their red markers moving steadily toward the heart of the Empire. Our main fleets are days away, an officer said. The defense fleet here is outnumbered 2-1. Then we make it. An uneven fight, Ethan said. You've got orbital platforms and planetary defense batteries, right? Yes, the officer replied. But they won't hold against a sustained assault. They don't have to, Ethan said. We just need to hold them long enough to trap them. Call in the nearest patrol groups, even if they're small. Scatter them along this path. He pointed to a cluster of systems between the Kalorans and the capital. Make it look like you're trying to block them clumsily. They'll push harder, thinking you're desperate. Then, he traced a looping line around the Kaloran route. We swing the defense fleet in from here, catching them between the batteries and our ships. One officer frowned. That puts the fleet dangerously close to the asteroid belt. Exactly, Ethan said. Use the same trick from the trial. They'll think you'd never risk it, which is why it'll work. Solara's gaze met his. Do it. Hours later, the plan was in motion. From the palace balcony, Ethan could see the streaks of defense ships launching into the sky. The people below were frightened, but they cheered when they saw Solara standing beside him. Liara joined them, her small hand slipping into Ethan's. You'll stop them, she said, not as a question but as a fact. We'll stop them, Ethan corrected. The battle began at dawn. From the command center, Ethan watched as the Kaloran fleet entered the trap. At first it looked like the Empire's ships were falling back under the heavy fire. But then, at the exact moment, the defense fleet swept in from the side and the orbital platforms lit the sky with streams of fire. The Kalorans, caught between two forces, tried to break away, but the asteroid belt cut off their retreat. Explosions dotted the black void, and one by one, the enemy ships fell silent. Cheers filled the command center. Enemy fleet in retreat, the officer reported. Sector secure. Solara turned to Ethan. It seems your instincts are as sharp in battle as they are in the trials. Let's just say I'm good at making trouble for people who try to hurt my friends, Ethan said with a grin. Liara hugged him tightly. I told you they'd see what I see. That evening, the palace was alive with celebration again. But this time, the cheers carried the weight of victory. The people no longer looked at Ethan as just a strange outsider. They looked at him as someone who had defended their home As the three of them stood on the palace balcony looking over the city lights, Solara spoke quietly. "Today proved something to me. You are not just a partner in title, Ethan. You are a partner in truth." "Good," Ethan said, "because I'm not planning on going anywhere." Liara smiled, holding both their hands. Then maybe the galaxy really will be safe. But far beyond the Empire's borders, in the dark reaches of space, new threats were already moving. Ethan knew peace wouldn't last forever, but he also knew that whatever came next, they'd face it together. A week had passed since the Caloran fleet's defeat, but the palace was still buzzing with energy. People across the Empire now spoke of the human who stood beside their empress, the man who had helped turn the tide in a battle that could have destroyed their capital. Ethan still wasn't used to the attention. Walking through the palace halls meant being greeted by guards, servants, and visiting officials with respectful bows or salutes. It was strange for someone who had spent most of his life being just another face in the crowd, in the grand dining hall. Solara and Liara waited for him. The long table was covered with breakfast dishes, some human-friendly, others made for alien tastes. Liara waved him over with a bright smile. "The High Council meets today," Solara said once they sat down, "for the first time since the trials and since the battle. They will confirm your position officially." Ethan nodded, though he felt a little uneasy. "And if they don't?" "Then they'll look foolish," Liara said confidently. "The people already see you as part of us." Solara's gaze was calm. "But it is still important to have the Council's support. Our enemies will try to use division if they see it." Later that morning, the council chamber filled with voices. The tall, arched room echoed with every word. Councilors sat in curved rows, each dressed in the colors of their sector. In the center stood Ethan, Solara, and Liara. One of the older councilors rose first. "Human Ethan," he said, "you have proven yourself in trials and in battle. Still, this decision is not one to take lightly. Why should we believe you will remain loyal to the Empire?" Ethan took a breath. "Because this Empire saved me as much as I saved it. When I first arrived, I was just passing through. But I've seen your people, how much they care for their worlds, how much they value honor. And I've seen the dangers you face. I'm not here for power. I'm here because I believe I can make a difference." A younger counselor stood. "And what of your human homeworld? If they called you back, would you leave?" "No," Ethan said simply. "Earth will always be part of me. But my home is where I choose to stand. And right now, I choose to stand here." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Solara's eyes met his briefly, and there was pride in her gaze. Finally, the council leader spoke. "Then let it be recorded, Ethan of Earth will serve as partner to Empress Solara and co-leader of the Varentis Empire." The chamber echoed, with the sound of the ceremonial chime. It was done. The next days were a blur of official duties. Ethan attended meetings about fleet patrols, trade agreements, and border security. He quickly learned that leadership wasn't all about grand speeches. It was about listening, making small but important decisions and sometimes saying no to those who expected an easy yes. Liara often joined him, sitting quietly beside him in meetings. When things grew tense, she would give him a small, encouraging smile that reminded him he wasn't alone in this. Solara was his greatest guide. She explained court customs, political traps, and the unspoken rules that kept the Empire's balance. She never treated him like an outsider, only as someone still learning, which he was. One evening, they stood together on the palace balcony. The city below glittered with lights, and ships moved through the sky like slow-moving stars. "You've done well," Solara said. "Many who doubted you now speak of your leadership with respect." "And the ones who still don't?" Ethan asked. "They will in time," she said, "or they will keep their doubts to themselves. Either is acceptable." Liara stepped forward, holding two small pendants made of silver and crystal. "These are for you," she said, handing one to Ethan and one to Solara. "They're made for families. They mean unity." Ethan looked at the pendant in his hand. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You are my father now," Liara said simply. "Not by blood, but by choice." The words caught him off guard. For a moment, he couldn't speak. Then he rested a hand gently on her shoulder. "And you're my daughter, by choice." Just as peace began to settle in, a message arrived from the outer sectors. The Kalorans had retreated, but other factions were testing the Empire's borders, hoping to take advantage of the recent chaos. In the strategy chamber, Ethan studied the new reports with Solara. "They're probing for weaknesses," he said. "If we hit them fast, we can keep them from joining together." Solara agreed. "We will send a combined fleet. You will lead alongside Admiral Varen." "Me? Lead a fleet?" Ethan asked. "You've already led us to victory once," Solara said. "This will be your first mission as co-leader. The galaxy will see our unity in action." The mission took them to the edge of the Empire, where 3 hostile groups were attempting to seize trade outposts. Ethan worked closely with Admiral Varen, using a combination of feints and fast strikes to keep the enemy off balance. The fleet moved with precision, reclaiming the outposts without heavy losses. When they returned to the capital, the crowds filled the streets to welcome them. It wasn't just Solara they cheered for. It was also Ethan, the human who had stood with them in war and peace. That night, in the quiet of the palace garden, Ethan sat with Solara and Liara under the starlight. "I think I finally understand something," Ethan said. "When you lead, it's not about the throne or the power. It's about the people who trust you to protect them." Solara nodded. "And that trust is the greatest responsibility of all." Liara leaned against him, "And we'll face it together." He looked at them both, his new family, his new home, and felt a sense of belonging he'd never known before. The galaxy was vast, and the future uncertain. But whatever came next, Ethan knew they would stand side by side. Empress, daughter, and the human who had chosen to become part of their world. And for the first time in his life, he felt ready for whatever challenges waited beyond the stars.